my journey as how I got into business and what actually inspired me to do it. When I got into business, it wasn't more that I had so much business acumen and I wanted to apply it in the marketplace. It was more from a perspective of survival in high school, in primary, and also in college, which led me to accept the fact that I am a businessman after all. So, after all that, I'm going to explain to you why you should focus on your strengths and not your weaknesses. Because we all have weaknesses in some areas and we have strengths, very heavy strengths in other areas. So, let me start with my story. When I was young, I used to be a very sit in the corner guy, don't talk to a lot of people because all of a sudden I felt like everyone was bigger than me and there's no way I could be compared to them. So, and that in those kinds of moments, I realized I had shortcomings, right? So, in my business journey, when I was in primary school, I started out with barter trade. I bartered my cup of porridge in the morning for a meal in the evening. And I did that for a couple of times that I reached to a point where I couldn't finish the meals I was getting in the evenings because I was willing to sacrifice my cup of porridge in the morning, give it to another person, and then I could get their plate in the evening. It was a very simple, but I didn't even know it was business then. It was a survival mechanism, as I told you. And I did that for a couple of years when I was in primary until I started realizing it's a good thing. I enjoyed it. Moving on to secondary, when I reached in secondary, I was still the little guy. I was the underdog. And by then, I was in secondary, but I wasn't the size of everyone else. I was this little guy, still sitting in the corners, still looking on the sidelines. And then I realized I didn't have pocket money, which was which was not a good thing if you're in secondary, right? You're eating less food, and then you realize you gotta find a way to actually get food. So that's when I realized I used to do this thing a lot, where if I'm bored or if I'm lonely, I should. I used to sit on my desk. Either I draw on the desk if I don't have a paper, or if I have a paper, I start drawing some stuff. I'm a huge fan of animated movies. At that time, it actually hit me. How can I actually buy something? How can I actually get money? In the meantime, I was buying food for seniors because they had so much pride they couldn't go to the normal canteen to buy their own food because there were also little kids there. So I used to do that for them in exchange for a portion of their food. I also did that for a while. It got so, tiresome that I started selling some of my art in an very inappropriate. So let me give you an example. I used to be this guy. I had a lot of, how do they call it, photogenic memory, photographic memory, where if I can look at a person and I know their face. So in the evenings, I draw their faces, and then at the bottom, if there are girls, I attach a nude, whatever of it. So that doesn't sound good on my resume, does it? But I had to do it, you know. And then I sold those for a couple of whiles, and it was pretty hectic, but I still love doing art. And then moving on a couple of years in secondary, my biggest business achievement in secondary school was when I started a betting platform in secondary school, which almost got me expelled. This is what happened. I created this betting thing before we had interclass games. I planned it around 3 days prior. The whole thing, I had like very little money on me at that point, and then said, why don't risk it all in that? So I'm a pretty good guy with marketing. I'm pretty good at marketing. So what I did, I got a couple of flyers that I made on my phone, which wasn't even working properly. I went to a printing station and then I got some flyers. I put them around the school, at the dining room, at the dormitories, at the water station, everywhere that I knew would get attention. Even the favorite blocks that people pass by a lot, I put it there. And then one of the things that actually catalyzed or increased the speed of my business journey was that I was willing to hire the head of marketing. He was like the prefect of sports and entertainment. And then I made I made him sign a contract with me that I could pay him weekly. And then fortunately he agreed to it. We made a lot of money that weekend, but it didn't last long because all of a sudden the administration of the school got involved. They're like, you can't be doing this in a school environment. This is so illegal. So we had to close. So the administration got into it, and very, I happened to be into a situation where I couldn't be doing that thing anymore, right? So I had to go through things with the finance and everything. Had to meet the directress. So it was a pretty hectic thing. But what actually saved me in that moment was that in my letter of apology, I wrote that I was doing this because I was trying to practice what you taught me in entrepreneurship. So I believe that's what actually got me to stay at that school. And then after school, I wasn't really feeling the whole idea of like going to college, everything, because I already knew it wasn't going to be helpful as much. And I already knew that there wasn't so much knowledge packed into the college package that would actually be good for me. So after that moment, I took a couple of months off. I was supposed to start college in like January 2023, but I had to delay it because I wasn't really sure why I was going to college. After a couple of months, January through February and March, I was examining myself. I tried to get at least a job to cover my boredom phase, which didn't work out very well. And then in all that, I realized I was more getting pulled onto the entrepreneurship side more than the working side of getting a job and everything. And after all that, it led me to a Russian billionaire. He has a couple of apartment buildings here in Rwanda. I We talked for a couple of weeks. Um, I was trying to actually buy an apartment from him, but then I realized I couldn't afford it. Long story short, and then I got some pretty good advice from him. One of it was, if I am to remember in good specific, um, he's a big guy on. I want to be very specific with this. Let me try to tell you one of a story that he shared with me. He said when he was young, he had he lost his father when he was very young, around 9 or 10, and he decided to stay in the Soviet Union for a couple of years, and then him and his friends sold everything they had, which is the major lesson I want you to think about. They sold everything they had so that they could go into real estate. It was a very rough beginning, and he decided to move out of the Soviet Union, going into Dubai. He bought a couple of apartments there, and then from then on, it just went on and on. From buying apartments in Dubai, New York, London, Nairobi, and then Kigali, including Cape Town. He told me one lesson is, if I had to put it into words that you would understand, it would come down to burn the boats, burn the bridges. When they sold everything they had, it was more of like, we are going all in, we're not going back. And I really want to emphasize that, although I'm still trying to figure out how does it apply to what I do, and how do I keep doing it. I've done it multiple times. I'm still trying to find those moments where you're trying to stick on something and can't really let go. So you have to always find those moments where it's a burn the bridges moment. So I think that's the biggest lesson I've had from him. He also taught me another couple of lessons. But continuing on with my story, I met him, and I also met him. I also met another guy. He's from Canada, US. I believe it's Canada. Yeah. Um, he's called Kaluleto. He's the CEO of AOH. I went to his office and we talked for a while. I told him I was running the Happy Cave. It's an online store I was selling hoodies on. It was more like my introduction into the e-commerce space. And I talked to him for a while. We went on to drive out of his office, drove around the Gishushu place across Kachiru towards the Vision City. And he told me some words that might have shaped why and when I took the decision to go to college. It was like, I didn't go to college because of my circumstances, but that doesn't mean you should go. And it doesn't end there. He also added that business opportunities will always come and go, but business will always be there. So from then on, I went on to join and start my college in May 2023. I went through college first semester, which was a very surprising thing to me, because I thought, now that I'm in college, might as well be preparing for become a good job guy. You know what I mean? I went into college first semester. I realized everyone was just in class. We were in a class of around 300 people listening to one lecture. It was more like a church, literally. And I was trying to understand how this business information actually applies to everyone in the room, because I realized that most business information isn't applicable to everyone. You're struggling to be in different fields, and you're trying to understand how to actually apply them. But in college, I think it was more of like just attend class and go. And by the end of the semester, I realized I had learned nothing. And that's what led me to create my first business in college, which was MKU Academia. I started it as a group to share what actually the lecture had taught, which means I got a couple of the students that would sit in front, and then everyone else just joined in the group because they wanted to know what the lecture was actually talking about. So it started like that. People started sharing what the lecture had said, assignments to do on, group assignments. From then on, I started putting in exam answer sheets, and everyone was paying for them. So I was like, okay, here we go. We did that on 100 members, 200 members, 500 plus members, and now it's almost 1,000 members. I don't even go to college classes that much, but the group is still running. So every exam season, I sell answer sheets, not because I want to, but because it's required and it's more like free money for me. So I was like, why not? So in December 2023, MKU Academia actually crossed 1 million Rwandan francs, which might sound like less, but if you can get to that level of revenue creation in college, you're actually doing great. So at that moment, I have done that for a while, which I reached around some semesters because I was so motivated to do it more. I was trying a lot of things. I started missing around college classes, which is a season of my life where I was starting to contemplate dropping out, which has never been a thing for me because I've always wanted to have a PhD, have a doctor in front of my name as a title. And dropping out has never been in my consciousness ever. And till now, the story is success is not linear. You're going to go through moments where you contemplate what you're doing, if what you're doing is even right, and why you even do it in the first place. But let me tell you, it doesn't happen because you want it to happen. It's just nature. Sometimes they say destiny will find you, and I've really found that to be true. Because as much as I escaped the entrepreneurship spirit of like, let me just sit down and do nothing, because I've had moments in my life where my entrepreneurship, um, my entrepreneurship zeal, if I had to say it like that, has put me in situations where I had to have problems with my parents. For example, I used to sell tickets at random events when they happen. I bought them for less and sold them at a premium because there's only a fixed capacity that the arenas can allow, and there's unlimited people trying to get those tickets. So if you can get a couple of tickets on high demand events, you can always have the upper hand. So what I did, I sold them, right? I got my money, but on the part where I had problems with the parents is that I used to do that and then come after my curfew. Of course, I had a curfew, right? I came late at home and then I had problems with my parents. But all of that teaches you that you have to break rules sometimes. You have to break rules if you're willing to survive as an entrepreneur, right? You cannot be constrained to any rules, no matter which they are, even the ones you set for yourself. Even the ones you set for yourself. You're allowed to be disciplined. You're allowed to have goals and lines that you can cross. But if the time comes, you have to break some of those rules. That's what makes us entrepreneurs. And I've come to understand that it actually comes down to three things. It actually comes down to three things. What goals do you have for yourself? Number one. Second, where do you want to go? Because you have the vision in your head, right? And three, what are you willing to give up? And funny enough, you'll find that if you're not willing to actually put that into action, if you aren't willing to let go of some things, because I've had these things said a lot of times. It's very obvious, but very hard to put into action. When you actually understand things that you're trying to get to in life, it's things that they tell you, like lay your bed, start taking supplements, start taking this and this, go to the gym, start running in the morning. And I'm like, success has always come down to subtraction, not addition of things in your life. And I've seen this with many successful people saying, stop doing to do lists for the new year. Start doing not to do lists, things you want to remove that you've been doing that you actually want to start now removing from your life, because you find out that most things need to be broken down into the core principles, the core parts, so that you can see all of them aligned and start removing what is not necessary. Because if you actually understand it very well, you would know this about the Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule, which actually states that 80% of your results come from 20% of the work. If you were to put it in another way, you'd say 80% of the problems you have come from 20% of the causes. And you go on and on and on, right? Like 20% of your revenue comes from 20% of your team. And 20% of your revenue also comes from 20% of your clients. And that happens with everything. So trying to find the middle, trying to find the perfect line for it is the way to go. And I want to put this into perspective. Business is an ever changing game, and you have to move away from being a business operator to a business owner. And let me tell you the difference. The difference is business operators micromanage. They are always trying to figure out what the employees are doing. Have you done this? Why are you doing this? If they are not doing anything, they want to add more work to them. That is not good. That is not good for you. That's not good for your employees. You have to find a system that works for you and for your employees. And a business owner, what they actually do is they help the team. They enable the team to do what he can't do. Let's say you're good at marketing like myself. I'm not good at accounting or operations. So when you hire a person, you have to let them do their job. You have to trust them enough that they can do their job well. And many people face this problem, like, what if they start slacking off and not doing what I told them to do? I think it comes down to how you manage. Management principles are very good to learn, and you have to be open to learning them. Let me give you an example. Some of the management principles that I got from my mentors are that instead of telling your employees what to do, tell them, ask them, ask them to tell you what they should be doing. Let's say if I ask my editor, for example, I asked him, what should you be doing this week? He's going to say I should finish editing a couple of long form videos and post a couple of short form videos. He goes on and on, and I'm like, yes, that is good. And then you ask him again, when do you think this will be finished? And then he tells you, let's say around Thursday morning or something. Any day, right? That works with you, of course. And then you say, good, good. I like that you're taking responsibility, and I like that you are putting into action what you're actually here to do. I like that. And then from then on, you see the magic that actually happens. Next time, if you come and they haven't actually finished what they said they were going to do, let's say you meet them again and they're like, what did you say you were going to do? Like this and this, this and this. You'll find that 80% of the work, or literally 100% of it, has been finished. And if they haven't finished it yet, they'll be like, yeah, I'll catch up by this evening. And you'll find out that that's how you keep your employees doing more instead of standing over them, standing over their shoulders and trying to do all of that with them. So, yeah, I think I know that's how it is going to grow your business. I know that's how you're going to grow your business because most entrepreneurs ignore that there are systems to management of your business, and ignoring them actually hurts you more than it hurts your employees. Your employees will always find another job, but your business is your baby and you need to help it grow, help it succeed. You know, there is this thing they say, there is no shortage of workers, but there is shortage of thinkers. And you are the thinker. You, the entrepreneur, are the thinker. So this is what we actually teach. This is what we actually teach entrepreneurs to do at B2A mentoring. We are like, when you put this system into place, your organization is literally running itself. You don't have to be there for it to perform efficiently. And you'll find out that business operators perform poorly than business owners. And most business people don't actually know the difference, which is bad for your performance. So if you want to grow above a certain revenue cap and you want to grow your profitability, your revenue across all your businesses, you have to have the right system. And that's what we are going to be going through with a couple of you today. For the people that have the exclusive membership, the exclusive access that we are going to do throughout this whole next month, you're going to be seeing the difference. And once you realize how many people are not putting into action what they actually hear, it's very saddening. It's very important to acknowledge that execution is what actually moves companies forward. If you can hear a lot of things and just put them into your ears and do nothing about them, it doesn't actually change anything. Which is why at B2A, we try to make sure every person that passes through our system has always the capacity to implement what we're actually telling them to do. Because what is the point of paying such an expensive price and doing nothing about them? We are exclusive. B2A is exclusive for a reason. If you don't succeed, it affects our reputation. And it is our duty that you succeed. And this brings me back to the point of discounts. They're like, why don't you give discounts? And let me give you a reason. Because discounts actually affect unconsciously the quality of the product and service you're giving. If you give too much discounts, it gives out the fact that you don't actually trust and you don't actually know what you're actually giving. It shows you're desperate for the sale. We're not desperate for the sale. We are desperate for a transformation in your business. And that is a two-way street. A business owner that is willing to pay a premium price for the transformation of their business is a person who knows the value of their business. If you're doing it as a get out scheme, and you don't actually care about your business, you're not going to come to us. You're not going to come to us, which is why we try to put it in a way that you should understand. We have a system to that. We have a system to that. You go through a diagnosis of your business. We find solutions for you, because the only way to find solutions to a problem is if you actually break the problem into many parts that you can actually understand where the pain is. Until that is done, you don't actually know what is the problem of your business. Because most businesses' problems fall into categories. 3 main categories. It's either marketing, sales, or management. And those 3, without all of them functioning at the same capacity and very effectively, it will hurt you and your business. And if you actually care about your business,